What else did you have in mind, man? Did you want to bring up anything else?
I did want to like get into like the how the John Deere jailbreak actually like happened, like what you did to actually get there.
Yeah, so like I initially started by I always pull apart devices and just like inspect them and figure out what chips they've got on the board. Go and look up the chips that are on the board and figure out what they do, whether it's like an amplifier or like a Wi-Fi chip, or it's like some sort of like TPM or some weird chip or module. With John Deere, I ended up getting this socket. They had like a BGA 100 chip, which is like a 100 balls socket. 100 ball chip that stored about 32 gigs, I think, or 8 gigs or something like that of the entire OS.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like a flat MBR GPT with like a small partition for the bootloader and all this stuff. And basically I'm like, oh, I kind of recognize this. It's like straight up Linux, right? So, I mounted it, I started editing it, and a lot of troubles happened. I think the first fail that I had was it reboots. When they had this shitty code in there that it counts every time it reboots up by 1. And if you reboot it 10 times, it doesn't boot anymore.
Yeah, it takes you to that,
it's so bizarre.
That system error screen or whatever it was.
Yes, yeah, there's weird system error. And then to bypass that, a guy in Brazil showed me, but you have to have the USB with the John Deere repo as like a USB. They have like the USB set up, but it has to be signed though, GPG key sign. And the repo has to be in the USB, and then you put a text file in there called dealerauth.txt with a capital A, camel case, right? Yeah. And
is that a blank text file? Just
correct. Yeah, it's like a marker. That's exactly right. That's the kind of things. But if you think about it, it's quite easy for them to be like, just make a file called dealerauth.txt. But it's so bizarre. It's so bizarre to think about that I joked that said that they didn't know their code well enough to add like a proper, catch or error or fail system there for certain features. Instead, they decided to lock them out to come and inspect it, which I think is bizarre. But it actually worked out okay, because after I fixed all that, I got in and I ended up, I think I modified that file, made it like read only or something. Something happened to it, and it stopped happening now. And actually now, because I've got some extra commands on the system, I can actually run a command they put in there called reset boot count. They have like a binary in there that just resets it for you. So
I presume, like with like a regular boot, that would just be run, so it doesn't, brick itself at some point. You would, restart the system over and over again as you're like doing things. Right. So with like a proper boot, it's running that at some point to make sure it doesn't cause that to happen.
I think they do it like that, or they do it some other way. But I definitely know that when I run it, because I can plug in a keyboard and mouse now.
Yeah.
KBM, I got the whole works now. I plug it in and plug in a mouse and everything. It's wild. And I also get a terminal, which I added. By the way, I added the terminal I tried a lot of things first. I think the first thing I tried was, obviously with the system, some part of it's going to be signed or checksummed, and you can see it's going to go through a check to figure out whether or not files are being modified before it boots.
Mm-hmm.
So I go in, I'm like, okay, the first thing I want to do is change the boot count, which didn't work, by the way, when I changed the boot count manually, because it was checksummed in some way or form. And I couldn't be bothered working out that arrangement of that brain fart, as I like to call it, of the developer that designed that system. Mm-hmm. So instead I was like, okay, what am I going to do? I figure out whichever way I get in. So I looked at the UDEV rules at maybe some whitelisted devices. Maybe there's some like USB sticks or network devices. And there's some TP-Link USB sticks that work and you can get in wirelessly. But the problem with that is I didn't want to connect to it wirelessly, because I didn't want it to go call Deere and then they get my IP address and they come and hack me. They've asked me for a name before and I said, nope. Well, that's the same with when I said the USB to Richard, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or Devin. Like they also added, I think I tried to change the FS tab in /etc FS tab and change the read as the RO, no A time, all this stuff. And I changed it to read write. Didn't boot. And then I think the way I got in, I just added a cron job. There was like a little cron job in a cron.d folder. There was like not daily. It wasn't like @daily or anything. It was like some random one, like logrotate.cron. So custom. It looked like I don't think that's custom as well, but there was a file there, logrotate.cron. I went in, just added my own one underneath of it, where I just pop up an Xterm emulator every minute. And then as soon as I booted it, I'd actually done some other modifications where I tried to put SDL libraries in there, which you need to run Doom. You need like libSDL And it was kind of fucking annoying because obviously Wind River doesn't release Doom for
I'm not
device.
Crazy. Who would have thought that?
Yeah, so I ended up getting Doom. I think I got it from Mage OS. I think it's called Mage OS or something like that. I got Chocolate Doom for Mage OS. It's like a Red Hat one. I think it's Dead Project. Or it might have been Fedora, ARM v7, HL. I don't know which it was. Whichever one it was, Bash didn't run, but I just copied Bash from the actual existing OS into this little. I made a little CH root. Like I added the essentials to get it to run in there, and I think I got it to mounts the rest of the disk. And then, because I think I had a problem with running Doom, right? So to get SDL, and there was another one in there, libSDL and something other, but I couldn't. I tried to preload it, but I think glibc or something was not the right version, and you can't do that. You have to run it through. Someone was like, do it through CH root. It's the easiest way to do it. So I did that, and then eventually I got Chocolate Doom running on it. But I wanted to get GZ Doom running on it, and GZ Doom is a lot more graphics intense, and this doesn't have a really good GPU on it. Obviously, it's not like a 4090 or something.
It's just got to show these little 3D tractors. That's all it needs to do. Doesn't need that much.
Yes, and I think it's CPU made tractors, like QT licensed stuff. But anyway, I think I got that. I basically just got it running on Chocolate Doom, and I had a really good mod where you would do the mowing on the tractor, and it would. Yeah, but I stole that. I borrowed it from another user called Skelligant in New Zealand, who is a Doom modder, and they had a really good mod with like a mowing one. It was like Lawn of the Dead. It was called Lawn of the Dead, and you like mow around.
I feel like I heard about that one. I was like,
oh, yeah, Lawn of the Dead. So that's like the original one. So so I went in and changed it. So I put corn and I put like a whole bunch of other stuff on it, and then I got into the GZoom Discord and DM'd Skelligant, and she's like, I'm like, is this okay? And it wasn't okay because they put in dogs and cows and sheep, and you could mow them over and like cause all sorts of gore. And someone was like, that's so inappropriate. And I'm like, I didn't realize it was that bad. I don't know. I'm not a farmer, so I don't know that it's not okay to. Obviously they go to the slaughterhouse eventually, but yeah, I didn't know it was wrong. So we ended up changing it. She changed it for me. All the sprites from the one that I had in GZ Doom, modified it to Chocolate Doom, so it's really basic. So you can skip the whole level. You just run straight to the exit. But you can mow around now. It's just like a skin change. You change the icons, change the sprites, and yeah, it worked. It was wild. It worked. And then I'm playing John Deere Doom Edition, not John Deere Doom Edition, Corn Edition Doom or whatever on the John Deere tractor. At DEF CON in front of like 2,000 people, 70,000 views on YouTube, whatever. And then it was wild, dude, wild. Yeah, that's it. John Deere, obviously, I surprised the heck out. I didn't tell him anything prior. I said there's gonna be a surprise at DEF CON, and blew him away. And I think I was just saying the other day, I was like, they should consider putting Doom stock in the next edition of tractors. Just to be like, we were always going to add Doom to our tractors. Like, it's not a big deal. We're always going to do that. It's not even a big deal.
If they had a sense of humor, that's definitely that would definitely be what they do. One thing you brought up with the dealer.txt file, there is. I can understand why that was the simple method they did. Looking at the way that ISP companies work, so in Australia, sometimes the government will be like, "Hey, block these torrenting sites, block this site, block that site." What they do is DNS block, because they assume that nobody is going to actually go and change their DNS to something else. So from John Deere's perspective, they're assuming that nobody is going to go out of their way to know, oh, you need to make this text file, and then you can just circumvent all their things. Like with gaming, for example, they're going to have these fancy DRM systems because people are well known to be trying to crack games and get into playing them. But, you were saying before these companies didn't have like massive security teams anyway. They just didn't think it was a thing that needed to be worried about. So they took the easiest possible approach because that's just, the cheaper way to do it. That would be my assumption, at least.
Totally, man. And they were also unaware that I would have the capability to extract the firmware from the device without some sort of like trick, you know what I mean? Like they didn't expect that people would generate like a socket. This is a socket for a different chip, but it's like a TSOP 48. This is like the typical one you find like a USB stick. It's like a long one. That's why USB stick is kind of long. And you just chuck it in there and then basically plug it into a socket reader, and it will just, you can mount the disc, you can mount the disc like it's a USB stick. And having that capability to modify the OS, unless it's an encrypted device, which you can also get, by the way, if it's encrypted, because but that's a bit more complex. You got to turn it on, debug it, or like get some sort of control over it, and then while it's booting or whatever, you can steal the key somehow. So it's definitely possible, and we've done it recently for that car that I showed you. So you can decrypt updates of some sort. But a guy in Latvia helped me with that. Nice dude. It's when you're funny when you think about it, because like I did all this from Thailand. Obviously I'm Australian as well, like yourself, but like I did this from Thailand. Some people do it from like Latvia and all this stuff. Like John Deere making a tractor in Des Moines, Iowa, or East Moline. Oh, it's raining. Imagine making one of those tractors and then being like, this is one day going to end up in the hands of a random hacker in Thailand who's going to run the game Doom from 1993 or 1994 on the tractor. It's such a bizarre concept.